They put the new nurse in the room with the blind Marine because they thought it would be funny. Welcome to Quiet Badge's Stories. I'm glad you're here, wherever here is for you today. This channel is for the ones who don't make noise, the people who carry the most and say the least, and the moments when the world finally figures out who it underestimated. Hit like if that sounds familiar to you. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, and drop me a comment. Tell me what city, what state, what country you're listening from. I want to know how far these stories travel. Now settle in, this one matters. Iris Whitfield had been a nurse at Hargrove Veterans Medical Center for 23 days. In 23 days, she had been handed the worst rooms on the ward, called the new girl by 2 attending physicians who knew her name perfectly well, and watched a charge nurse named Paula Scarrett file her daily assignment sheet with the particular satisfaction of someone sticking a pin into a map. Iris let them. She wore her cerulean blue scrubs loose at the shoulders. She kept her dark hair twisted back without ceremony. She moved through the halls the way water moves, around obstacles, never against them, never loud. The veterans she treated seemed to sense something in her that the staff did not. They let her adjust their pillows without flinching. They answered her questions directly. Twice, old men who had refused breakfast for 3 days ate when she sat with them long enough. The staff called it luck. Paula called it naivety. On the morning of the 23rd day, Paula set a chart on the medication cart and let it slide toward Iris without looking up from her coffee. Room 14, she said. Gunnery Sergeant Milo Strand, retired Marine Force Recon, IE'd blast in Syria 2 years ago, lost both eyes, damaged his larynx. He can barely produce sound. He communicates by tapping on surfaces, except nobody knows what he's tapping, and he won't let anyone touch him long enough to find out. She paused for the effect. 3 nurses have already tried. Dr. Clifton Abrams leaned out of the physician workroom with a tablet under his arm. He looked at Iris the way people look at furniture they're not sure belongs in the room. Whitfield. Vitals, pain assessment, chest auscultation. He's been running a fever since admission and his respiration pattern is irregular. The corner of his mouth moved. Shouldn't take long, unless it does. Kevin Aldridge, a second-year resident, had his phone out before Iris had even lifted the chart. She noticed. She did not react. She read the file on the way down the hall. Milo Strand, 44 years old. RPG blast. Bilateral optic nerve destruction, total blindness. Laryngeal fracture, surgically repaired but functionally limited. Low sounds only, no intelligible speech. Admitted 3 days ago after collapsing at an outpatient imaging appointment. Fever, irregular heart rate. Chest discomfort reported by a staff member who had observed him pressing his fist to his sternum, and then refusing to respond to further questions. 3 attending notes in 3 days. All of them used the same phrase, non-cooperative. Iris had learned to read that phrase the way she read other vital signs. It almost always meant someone had stopped trying. She stopped outside room 14 and looked through the glass. Milo Strand sat upright against the headboard with his arms braced at his sides, not resting, not comfortable. Sitting the way a man sits when he has learned that every room is a potential problem and positioning himself costs nothing. His jaw was set, his unseeing eyes faced slightly left of center. Tracking sound, she realized, not light. 2 orderlies stood near the foot of the bed, with the expressions of men who had already made their peace with failure. She knocked twice on the doorframe, low and deliberate, a sound he could feel as much as hear. His head turned toward it. Good. She entered slowly, left the door open behind her, and made sure her footsteps were audible all the way to the bedside. No surprises, no approach from the blind side. You can go, she told the orderlies. He threw a water pitcher at the last one of them said. Then someone startled him, you can go. They went with visible relief. Iris stood 4 feet from the bed. She let the room settle. She waited until she was sure he had located her by her breathing and the slight sounds of her movement. Then she reached forward. Slowly, deliberately, the motion announced by the rustle of her sleeve, and placed 2 fingers on the back of his right forearm. He went, rigid. She tapped, not random, deliberate. Letter by letter using the contact alphabet, fingers pressing sequences against the tendons of his arm, the way it was meant to be used. I am Iris, I am your nurse, I will not touch you without permission. The room became very quiet. Milo did not move for 4 full seconds. Then he tapped back against her wrist 1 word. Repeat. She repeated it. His breathing changed, not worse, more controlled. He tapped again. How do you know contact code? Training. Military. She answered in the only way she intended to, I am your nurse. His mouth moved without producing real sound, but she saw the shape of what he said, fair. Outside, through the narrow window, Paula had come to watch. Kevin stood behind her. Neither one was laughing. They looked confused, and confused was worse for them than laughter would have been, and Iris understood that without caring about it particularly. She took his vitals, fever 101.1, pulse 118 and uneven, with the particular hiccup that made her stop and count again. Blood pressure 94/60. She listened to his chest in sequence, left lung, then right, then the heart. She held the bell of the stethoscope over his precordium and listened. Muffled. The sounds were present, but muffled, as if someone had layered gauze between her instrument and the organ producing them. She straightened. She looked at his neck. The jugular veins were distended, visible and taut against the skin even when he was sitting upright. She checked the blood pressure a second time. 91/58, falling. Hypotension, jugular venous distension, muffled heart sounds. Her body assembled the diagnosis before the words had finished forming. She tapped 2 words on his wrist, "Stay still." She went to the door. "I need Dr. Abrams now." Abrams arrived with the irritation of a man who has been interrupted and believes interruption is a form of disrespect. He reviewed the numbers on Iris's notepad and shook his head once. Fever and tachycardia. He's been refusing his antibiotics. That's what refusal looks like. His heart sounds are muffled. His neck veins are distended. His pressure has dropped twice in 10 minutes. PTSD elevates resting heart rate and creates somatic complaints. You would know that if you'd been here longer than 3 weeks. It's not the heart rate that concerns me. Abrams looked at her over his tablet with a particular patience that isn't patience at all. Document the vitals. I'll reassess this afternoon. He may not be stable until this afternoon. Kevin, from the doorway, smiled into his phone. Paula looked at her clipboard and found something interesting to examine. Abrams's voice sharpened. "Nurse Whitfield, do not dress up a panic response as clinical judgment. Document the vitals and administer his oral antibiotic as ordered." "Understood," Iris said. Clear did not mean compliant. She had learned that distinction in colder rooms than this one. She returned to Milo. He tracked her return by her footsteps and placed his hand where she could find it. She sat and he tapped. "What did the doctor say?" "He disagrees with me." "What do you think?" "I think your heart sounds wrong. I think you need imaging." He was quiet for a moment, then been saying that for 2 days. That sentence settled in her chest like a stone. The monitor climbed. Pulse 126 and more irregular, pressure 88/53, oxygen 93 and trending. Then Milo tapped something different. The rhythm compressed. Shorter signals, no spaces, a cadence that had nothing to do with the contact alphabet. Something older. Something she had not heard tapped against a surface since a different life in a different country, under very different circumstances. Touch code. Survival, evasion, resistance, escape, the kind of shorthand that existed for the spaces between radio contact and daylight, when sound was a liability and time was not a resource. Pressure building, not lungs below, getting worse, fast. No civilian nurse should have understood that sequence. No ordinary veteran should have still held it to fluency. Iris answered without deciding to. "I see you. Hold." Milo's hand went still in the specific way of someone who has just had an impossible thing confirmed. He tapped 3 letters. "Ghost?" She should have looked confused. Confusion would have been safe. Instead, she tapped back. "Ghost is retired." He turned toward her, not with his eyes but with his whole face, orienting toward her presence the way a person orients toward warmth in a cold room. Then he tapped. "Retired, don't know the code." "This one does." Paula opened the door without knocking. "How's it going?" she asked. "Get me a portable cardiac ultrasound," Iris said. Kevin made a sound that started as a laugh. "You can't order imaging." "Then tell me the correct protocol when a patient presents with Beck's triad, and I will follow it precisely." The word Beck's triad landed in the room differently than she expected. Kevin's expression changed. Paula looked up from the doorframe. Iris looked at the monitor. Oxygen 134, pressure 84/49. She pushed the rapid response button. Abrams reached the room before the team. His voice came ahead of him. "Who called rapid response?" "I did." "You do not have the authority to." "His oxygen is 91 and his pressure is 84. Rapid response exists for exactly this." Dr. Sutton Briley, trauma surgery, arrived with the team and moved to the bedside with her stethoscope already in her ears. She listened to Milo's chest for 8 full seconds. She did not speak during those 8 seconds. Then, who flagged the muffled heart sounds? "I did," Iris said. "How long ago?" 40 minutes. Briley looked at Abrams. Something passed between them that did not require words. The portable ultrasound arrived. Briley placed the probe below Milo's sternum, angled up. The screen resolved, the dark outline of his heart beating, and around it, a gray crescent of fluid, thick and pressing, compressing the chambers with every cycle. "Pericardial effusion," Briley said. "This is tamponade." Abrams's expression went through several stages quickly. Certainty was the last thing to exit it. Milo's pressure dropped to 76/41, the monitor alarmed. Iris placed her hand where Milo could reach it. He tapped immediately. "Do what you need to do." "Patient consent confirmed in his primary communication method," Iris said. "We'll proceed with pericardiocentesis," Briley said. Abrams said, "I should be the one too." "You had 40 minutes, Briley said. Not unkindly. Not unkindly was somehow harder." She looked at Iris. "You've done this before." It was not a question. Iris did not answer it. She opened the tray. Abrams put a hand on her arm. "You are not credentialed to perform." Milo found her other hand and tapped 2 letters. "Go." "Consent given," she said. She cleaned the subxiphoid site. Milo turned his face toward her even though he could not see, tracking her by breath and the small sounds of preparation, staying oriented to her presence the way a compass needle stays oriented to north. She found the angle, controlled pressure, entry. Dark fluid drew back into the syringe, 1 milliliter, 5-10-20. Then Milo's heart sounds returned, clear and full, audible across the room without a stethoscope. His pressure climbed, 76-89, 89-103. 1. The monitor alarm stopped. The room held its silence for a long moment. Paula stood at the foot of the bed with her arms at her sides and her clipboard forgotten somewhere on the floor. Kevin's phone was in his pocket. Abrams stared at the syringe, the way a man stares at the evidence of a mistake he cannot unmake. Briley secured the catheter, ordered the echocardiogram, the cardiology consult, the complete workup. When she reached the doorway, she paused. "Good catch," she said. 2 words. They struck Iris harder than she was prepared for. She looked at the floor for 1 second, not at a hospital floor, at another one. Darker, smaller, somewhere that had smelled of concrete dust and propellant and the copper salt of blood. She pushed it down. Milo needed present tense. Later, when the room had quieted and the cardiology team had come and gone, and Milo's pressure was steady and his fever was being addressed, he found her hand and tapped in the SEER code. Not the slower contact alphabet, the compressed field version. Torres, Iron Hollow, 2nd tunnel. She did not respond. He talked about Ghost for a year after extraction. Said a woman came back in when the tunnel was compromised. No order given. He was bleeding out. She carried him. Torres walked out of that valley. Someone went back in to make that happen. Iris checked the drainage line. She checked the monitor waveform. She wrote the time in the chart in her controlled, even handwriting. "Why hide here?" he tapped. She gave him the answer she could say without it costing too much. "Because here no one expects anything." He was quiet. "Then I expected nothing. You showed up anyway." The administrative meeting happened at 4 o'clock in a room that had been designed for problems that moved slowly. Gordon Hess, the hospital administrator, sat at the head of the table. Abrams sat to his right. Paula took the chair closest to the door. Iris stood. "We're reviewing an unauthorized procedure," Hess said. "We're reviewing a life-saving intervention on a patient who would have arrested within minutes without it." Abrams leaned forward. "You had no credential to." Gunnery Sergeant Strand consented before I proceeded in his primary communication method. Dr. Briley has documented that the intervention was appropriate and timely. I am happy to discuss the 40-minute window during which the attending of record had the opportunity to act and did not. The room developed a texture. The door opened. Special Agent Delton Fry from the VA Office of Inspector General entered with a folder, and the deliberate economy of someone who had delivered difficult news in similar rooms many times. "Mr. Hess." He set the folder on the table. "We've been investigating billing patterns at this facility for 4 months. Sergeant Strand was transferred to this ward 8 weeks ago, after filing an informal complaint with our office. His admission coincides with 3 others over the past year, all patients with communication barriers, all repeatedly documented as non-cooperative, all denied indicated procedures and billed for psychiatric holds instead." Abrams did not move. "The working theory," Fry continued, "is that patients who could not advocate verbally for themselves were considered unlikely to pursue formal complaints." He looked at Abrams. "Sergeant Strand's medical bag was searched without consent twice during his admission. One search was conducted by a member of your team." Kevin made a sound from the corner that was not quite a word. He looked at the table. He did not look at his phone. Iris looked at Paula. Paula looked at the wall. Abrams began a sentence. Fry lifted one hand flat. The sentence stopped. "I'd strongly suggest you speak with an attorney before you continue, Doctor." The room did what it had failed to do all day. It listened to the right person. That evening, Iris sat beside Milo's bed while the ward quieted into its overnight rhythm. He tapped against her palm without urgency. the slow, precise cadence of someone with something to say and enough time to say it right. Why keep hiding after today? She thought about that. The honest answer had more than one layer. She gave him the top one. Because ghosts served a purpose, the nurse serves a different one. Same person. Same training, different assignment. He was quiet for a moment, then he tapped something she had not expected. Torres sent a message through the VA last year, looking for Ghost, said she saved his life and he never got to say so. She looked at the cardiac monitor, even and steady. Torres is stubborn, she tapped. So is Ghost, he answered apparently. The corner of her mouth moved, just barely. Thank you, he tapped, for not leaving the room. She did not know if he meant the room 14 behind them or a tunnel in a mountain in a country she was not supposed to have been in. She decided both were true. The formal investigation took weeks. The changes inside Hargrove came faster. Iris wrote her requirements on a single sheet of paper and gave it to Briley, who gave it to the OIG, who attached it to the findings report with the weight of documented evidence behind it. Every patient with a communication barrier would have a qualified interpreter or a formally documented alternative communication plan before any clinical assessment was recorded. The label non-cooperative would require supervisor sign-off and a written account of every communication method that had been attempted and how each was received. No procedure would be denied on the basis of inability to give verbal consent where an alternative method existed, was available, and had been offered. It was not everything, it was a start. Paula came to Iris on a Wednesday with a printed contact alphabet reference sheet she had found online. She did not offer excuses, she did not ask for absolution. There's a retired petty officer in room 7, she said. Lost his hearing 18 months ago. The whiteboard system isn't working for him. I thought I'd try something different. Iris looked at the paper, then at Paula. Practice the vowels first, she said. They come up the most. Paula nodded and walked down the hall toward room 7, with her shoulders set like someone who had decided, somewhere between morning and now, to be a different kind of nurse. Iris watched her go. Kevin submitted a written apology and enrolled in a disability communication elective at the medical school. It was a small gesture against a larger debt. Iris thought that was right. Small gestures done consistently were how people rebuilt the thing they had broken. On discharge day, Milo Strand came down the hall in civilian clothes with a white cane sweeping in a practiced arc. He moved precisely, without hesitation, knowing the layout from 2 weeks of navigating it by sound and touch. He stopped where Iris was standing. He always knew exactly where she was, and placed one hand on the counter between them. He tapped slowly and deliberately in the contact alphabet. Not the Seer code, the regular one, the one anyone watching could have followed if they had tried. You thought his silence meant he had nothing to say. He paused. Then you thought her quiet meant she had no power. He was still for a moment. You were wrong about both of us. Iris spoke it aloud because the hallway needed to hear it. A veteran near the window raised 2 fingers as Milo passed. Not a salute, exactly. Something older. The recognition that passed between people who understood the survival was not the same as being seen. And that being seen, finally, required someone willing to look. Milo paused at the door. He tapped once more against the doorframe. Not for the room, just for her. Ghost or nurse, doesn't matter, you stayed. Iris straightened her badge on her scrub pocket. It still read Iris Whitfield RN. No rank, no call sign, no operation name underneath. That was enough. Months later, people would tell the story wrong. They would say the new nurse cracked a classified military code. They would say the blind Marine had been hiding evidence inside a hospital bag. They would say a doctor got arrested and a federal agent showed up, and the whole thing unraveled in a single afternoon. All of that was true. But it was not the story. The story was smaller, more ordinary, and more important than any of it. A group of coworkers decided that a patient's blindness and a nurse's quietness were safe things to use for entertainment. They expected an easy afternoon. What they got was a mirror. And what it showed them, what it shows all of us, if we're honest enough to look, is that silence is not the same as absence, that stillness is not the same as weakness, that the person everyone dismisses is sometimes the only one in the room who has already been through the fire and come back carrying someone else. Sometimes the patient no one listens to is the one keeping the truth alive. And sometimes the nurse in the plain blue scrubs is not hiding because she is afraid. She is hiding because the last time the world asked everything of her, it cost her more than it had any right to. And then one day, someone needs her again. She steps forward anyway. That's the end of this one. If it moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Quiet Badges Stories so you don't miss what comes next. And leave me a comment. Wherever you're listening from, I want to know. These stories belong to all of you. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you in the next one.